Hello and welcome to Frank's School. My cat wants to get the camera. That getting dark and getting white, that might have to do with the fact I have an all-black cat laying right there by the camera. I don't know. Anyway, this is the 122nd day of the 6th year, first video, and I'm going to call it More Prejudice toward Hydra. And I'll admit, prejudice is not a good thing. It exists. A difference, though, with this prejudice is it's going to be prejudice in favor of help with my dealing with Hydra. And I did want to say, too, that this has to do with a probability, not a certainty. I listed categories that I thought it was not probable that they would either understand or be very willing to help with my dealing with Hydra. In a sense, this is going to be like affirmative action. If you remember the phrase back when prejudice was revealed so blatantly or clearly in the 1960s and 70s, well, it's not enough to just talk about it. You've got to do something about it. Put some black people in the universities. Well, these are groups that I would give the benefit of the doubt to. But a couple other things. No, and I'm going to start erasing things because this is all so complicated. It looks so complicated. I don't usually turn my back on the camera, but there you go. On the right-hand side, I have tamed. I have found the cutting edge, I think. This is previews of coming attractions, I guess. I have not yet dealt with politics or culture, but I will. I think there is a tame and a cooperative Hydra in sight over there. And happily, there's an end to this autobiographical nature of my talking because I've gone in chronological order. And that happened basically with January this month, 2018. I'm currently reading a book published this month. It deals with the cutting edge. I'm going to see if that cat will behave itself. All right, now, where to look for help? Underdeveloped, I put it in quotes, underdeveloped countries. I put some hope on them. The poor, they are more likely to understand, I think. The disenfranchised, I would not usually use that word, but I think it applies. And the refugees. Far from being a problem, I can imagine the refugees as a resource, especially in terms of knowledge. And you talk about these things, and the Pope comes to mind. Pope Francis, named after St. Francis of Assisi, named himself after that. And I ask myself sometimes, is the Pope a closet Hindu? Used to be a joke, something obvious. Is the Pope Catholic? Well, is the Pope Hindu? Some of what he says, it shows some indication of that to me. Now, I just recently ran into that term, and it offended me as soon as I heard it. When I realized that Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain, and then later Ireland, were collectively regarded, given that name, pigs. I took offense to that. I couldn't help it. It was automatic. Because I'm bonded with Portugal and Portuguese, for one thing. But I have it here, though, because it seems that within Europe, Southern Europe, is where the hope may lie, not your Northern Europe, in terms of understanding this issue and dealing with this issue. I'll be happy to erase that. As a matter of fact, while I'm on the Europe business, I think Europe is more likely to be helpful to me than the USA. Both. I have the word shame there because I think Germany, really forever, is having to deal with shame because of what happened 80 years ago. In their role in World War II, mostly, not as much World War I, but they have to deal with that. That happened. And they can rationalize it. And they're not fully to blame by any means. I mean, I understand that way too much. But they have to deal with that. Well, the USA, in a similar way, is going to have to deal, or already has to deal, with the shame that's going to probably be symbolized by Donald Trump. But it's not just Trump. It's the people who believed him, followed him, liked what he said, that America first, that me first business. But in spite of that, in spite of dealing with that shame, I think out of Europe there could come hope. Out of the U.S. There can come hope as well. In a sense, that would lead right into that. But let me keep going over here. High school dropouts. Yeah, one of the smartest people I know is a high school dropout, and I work with him a lot. But that term dropout, back in the 1960s and 70s, it was derogatory. Hippies were dropouts. They went off and had their communes and they just dropped out. Well, actually, there's new reasoning arguments saying that dropping out is a very good and moral thing to do. So I would look to, I'd be interested in dropouts. Criminals. Well, because of Tolstoy's book Resurrection, partly, not just completely, I started to volunteer at the prison, at the jail, the local jail, and I know criminals. I really like them, and I find them very interesting people. At some point I'm going to read, once again, Civilization and Its Discontents by Sigmund Freud, because he was writing about criminals. I want to see, once again, what he had to say about them. And you know, I put lefties there because at one point we were all sitting there and writing, and I realized that of the 10 people or so there, a majority of them were left-handed. And I thought, well, why is that? Well, I've always thought lefties have a bit of a different way of looking at the world. But anyway, on we go. Now, Mennonites. I'm not a Mennonite. I suppose if I absolutely had to accept a culture as it is, I'm as close to Mennonite as anybody that as the other people that I would know around here. I really like the people that I've met among the Mennonites. And when I first started to go to that church, because their love of music and singing and stuff, an old lady explained to me that, well, there were different kind of Mennonites, but the best way to understand them is that they were simple people. They were just simple people. And I like that. 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free. You might know that song. The women are unpainted. You know, if a woman showed up here covered in makeup with bleached teeth and wearing the latest fashion, I would think, what are the odds that she would be able to understand this or relate to this or help with Hydra? Following fashion. Now, I think there's a fatal flaw, or I don't know if it's fatal, but there's a flaw among the Mennonites that I know, is they are producerists, big time. Now, consumerism I've known about for a very long time and regarded it as a big problem, and it is. But producerism was a new term to me. I ran into it in a way. I knew about the, what do you call it, the Protestant work ethic, or sometimes it's called the, I don't know, I think maybe American work ethic, that work is good, you should be working is good, produce. Well, that comes into question. When you, for me, later I'll explain maybe. And they have very large families. They tend to. In other words, you know, really what that means is they accept modern medicine, modern nutrition, but not birth control, and their families are very large. That is a problem, I think. All right, now hand workers, artisans. Yes, I would tend to go to them. I think that they might understand. Inventors. Now, I wiped out engineers. Well, engineers are schooled and they do all that drawing and usually an inventor is a more practical person. And there are all kinds of them. And you see on YouTube all kinds of very clever inventions. But this is in a very humble way. YouTube is like the new word of mouth, where something can spread instantly across the world. Some idea that somebody comes up with, you see it all the time. Neo-Edisons, I think of them, just like Thomas Edison invented all these things. Well, I think the world is covered with Neo-Edisons now who are inventing simple things. So yes, absolutely. Organic gardeners, permaculture, woofers. You know, you could look into it yourself, but I regard them as very hopeful in their attitudes at the very least. The young, yes, born since about 1995. The young, I regard them as hopeful. A little bit older than that, not so. And the very old. My own generation, no. from my experience in watching them, in the 60s, they were so proud of themselves because they were so idealistic in so many ways, and they were. But I think they sold out. I think, in effect, my generation became what the Old Testament would have called an evil generation, and our children as well. So I think there's like 2 generations there that bear a tremendous amount of blame. But the young, I think, maybe past that finally, because it's like my generation ended up teaching their children to live the similar way. And the very old, I know some that are older even than me, that they understand and they know. And then landowners. Well, if someone owns land, they have a lot of potential there. Someone doesn't own land, well, they still have a lot of potential there. But then comes up that question of rural versus urban. I live in a rural area. But the thing about that is there's such great fear, it seems to me, among the rural people. Fear of the urban people. Fear that their ruralness will be taken away. And well, I don't know if I can go into this, but there's so much potential by an enlightened landowner. But they would have to get past that. I mean, so many rural people are armed to the teeth with guns around here, and I don't know, at least in the United States, ready to protect their little world against others, whether they be other rural people or urban people. There's just such fear. And vice versa, I suppose. But anyway, if someone has land, they then could help, largely for people who do not have land. All right, well, I'm not done. But anyway, that was prejudicial, I know. Bye for now.